Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. David F. Sandberg and writer of Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Henry Gayden, have explained the exclusion of Mr. Mind and Dr. Sivana in Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So let's wheel it back a bit to the first Shazam movie's post-credit scene. So basically, Sivana has been captured. He's either in an asylum or a prison, and then he discovers Mr. Mind, who tells him he's going to help him. So Henry Gayden and David F. Sandberg have explained what the plan would have been in their involvement in Shazam! Fury of the Gods. They were the reason that the Daughters of Atlas were going to come to Earth and start messing with the Shazam family. But David F. Sandberg claims that there was too much story to tell, so they cut Mr. Mind and Dr. Sivana from Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Basically, in translation, they were too lazy to include them in the film. Now, say what you want about Kevin Feige, but he's always thought about his post-credit scenes very, very deeply and has never cut an idea from a post-credit scene and never used it. Of course, I could be wrong about that, but I don't think that's the case. Basically, what you don't do is do what David F. Sandberg and Henry Gayden did, which is put Mr. Mind in a post-credit scene and go, nah, this is too much like hard work. We better not do it. This is one of multiple reasons why the DCEU failed. It failed in its faulty planning. You do not put Mr. Mind in a post-credit scene. Excite the fans. You know, hardcore DC fans all know who Mr. Mind is. Dr. Sivana is a celebrated villain in the DCEU. He's one of the best villains in the DCEU. Absolutely fantastic and so well performed as well. But of course there could be deeper reasons for Mr. Mind and Dr. Sivana not being in Shazam! Fury of the Gods or not being part of the main plot of that film, and it could just be because they're male. Because we all know how twisted Hollywood are today, and they wouldn't want male villains getting in the way of the female villains. But whatever the reason for this change of mind and change of heart on Sivana and Mr. Mind, it's very faulty thinking. You've put them in there. You know, a post-credit scene means a lot to audiences today. So what you don't do is you put them in and then say, well, we're not going to use them. It's not like they were just put in there or Mr. Mind was just put in there for an Easter egg. But to be fair to David F. Sandberg, a director I really like. I think he's really funny. He's great. I like the way he speaks to fans. I don't have any personal problem with David F. Sandberg as a person or a creative. But I think that Warner Brothers and Gayden and David F. Sandberg were wrong for cutting Mr. Mind and Sivana from this story. Basically having them as the reason for the Daughters of Atlas coming to Earth and messing with Shazam and the Shazam family is a very, very good idea. It gives context from the first movie to its sequel. That's very, very good. It gives you connections. Connections are the reasons the MCU has been so successful. And, you know, just to say, oh, you know, no, it's too hard. We're not going to do this. I think this is really, really faulty thinking. I'm absolutely stunned that David F. Sandberg and Henry Gayden have come out during the marketing and said, basically, we couldn't be bothered to do this story because it's too much story. As I say, AKA, it's too much like hard work, hey? So let's not bother doing it. So I'm absolutely disappointed that Mr. Mind were cut and that Dr. Sivana, you know, was cut from this movie as well, because I think that would have been a great connection from the first film. Look, it's not a deal breaker for me. I'm still going to go and enjoy this film. But to me, maybe you shouldn't admit it. And obviously, people are going to ask the question, what happened to Mr. Mind? You put him in a post-credit scene. Why isn't he still there? And, you know, this is the problem. You've got to have a certain mentality when you're doing a connected universe, which is exactly what the DCEU was supposed to be. But when you go from Snyder to Johns and Berg to Hamada, you lose all the connective situation that you would have had if you stuck with Snyder, because Snyder had a plan. Each of the Snyder movies kind of lifts off from the last movie. It's brilliant. It's a great way of having an interconnected kind of universe. Then we went to Geoff Johns and John Berg, who didn't want to do anything that Snyder had done. They, you know, wholeheartedly disagreed with the way Snyder did things. And then we went from, you know, Johns and Berg to Walter Hamada. So there's not any connections. It's not, you know, DCEU isn't a connective franchise because it's had too many leaders with different ideas. We started with a darker, grittier, realistic universe to, I don't know what Geoff Johns and John Berg were attempting to do. And I know exactly what Walter Hamada was attempting to do. But at the end of the day, they all failed. One of the reasons that, you know, Johns and Berg and Hamada failed is because, you know, they were going away from what the DCEU was originally. That's why I've always said, and many people have always said, which is right, they should have allowed Snyder to finish his arc. Then anyone could have come in and started a new chapter in the DC Extended Universe. But, again, to be fair to David F. Sandberg, he had a lot of kind of connections in his first Shazam film from the DCEU and from the Snyderverse. Loads of Easter eggs from the Snyderverse, and it was great. And all credit to him for doing that. I would assume the cutting of Mr. Mind and Dr. Sivana weren't exactly anything to do with David F. Sandberg, because I think that David F. Sandberg is merely the director. Henry Gayden is the writer. I'm assuming this is a Walter Hamada situation. Walter Hamada was going to be extremely woke with the DCEU. Bringing in Supergirl to replace Superman. Bringing in Batgirl to eventually replace Michael Keaton's Batman. So they were going incredibly woke. And I do believe that there's female villains, supervillains in this film for a reason. And they were doing that for that woke reason. So they didn't want any male supervillains like getting in the way of the voices of the female supervillains. And it's all very, very problematic. So I put that on Hamada. That's why Hamada is no longer in a job. Because his leadership simply didn't work. It had a lot of failures. Birds of Prey was a mess because he allowed Margot Robbie to do whatever she wanted. Wonder Woman 84 was a mess because he allowed Patty Jenkins to do whatever she wanted. Ultimately, he wasn't doing a very good job at the end of the day, and what he was doing was utterly messy. Doesn't mean he's not good at his job. He just made mistakes. And the problem with the DCEU as well is that the studio were interfering with Snyder, with Johns and Berg, and then with Walter Hamada. Nobody could do whatever they wanted to do. And that's the beauty of a DC Studios being led by James Gunn and Peter Safran. They're the studio heads now. They get to make the decisions. It's their plan, right? They bring in the directors and they instruct them to do what they want to do, but they give them an element of freedom. And James Gunn will give his directors an element of freedom. Now, James Gunn has been back on Twitter, which always makes things a little bit interesting. First of all, Snyderverse stands are calling him a liar because he once said he didn't want to make a Superman film and he didn't want the position of Kevin Feige or Walter Hamada. Listen, someone's not a liar because they said, oh, I'm not going to do a Superman movie, right? You know, I say things, lots of things before. Oh, I'd never do this, I'll never do that. I was very anti-Ezra Miller last year. And now it's not that I'm pro-Ezra Miller, but I'm pro-DC. And I really want to see the Flash movie. So I'm letting that anger and hatred for Ezra Miller go because I want to support DC. He's a millionaire actor. Why should I rob myself of a great DC movie because of one, flawed and problematic individual? So we all say things that maybe we mean at the time, but then change our minds. He was asked at the time, would you want to run DC? He said no. Why would he say no? Well, it's obvious. If he says he wants to run DC, it's disrespectful to Walter Hamada while he's the DC Films president. So, he's not going to say, yes, I want to do that. So there's that. He once said he would never make a Superman movie. Yes, I've said a lot of things. I've said before that I'd never date the girl that I'm dating now. We all go back on ourselves. There's lots of things I've said. I'd never watch this film. I'd never like that actor. And then I end up liking that actor. I say a lot of things on Twitter and on here. Then I change my mind and people call me out on it. But you once said this: the internet loves a gotcha, but there's no such thing as a gotcha. We can say a billion different things that we don't believe in the present day. So what these idiots do, they go through everything you've ever written, everything you've ever posted, every video you've ever posted, and they try and get a gotcha on you because they don't have the intellect to debate with you. They get triggered, they get upset because you don't agree with them, that you're kind of winning the debate, if you like. So they don't have the intellect to come back at you, so they have to try and find a gotcha. There's no gotcha on James Gunn. At the time, James Gunn didn't want to make a Superman movie. At the time, James Gunn didn't want to run DC. And at the time, he didn't want to replace Kevin Feige as Marvel Studios president. And that's okay. So the Snyder fans thinking they've got a gotcha here, they haven't. They're trying to prove that James Gunn is a liar. Have you ever met anyone who's never lied before? And I can't stand these people who say, I've never lied. That's the biggest lie of all. I've lied, you've lied. When I was a kid and I did something naughty and my mum caught me out, guess what I did? I lied so I could get away with it. So whether it's now or in the past, we've all said things that may be a tad wrong or gone back on what we already said. It doesn't mean anything because the world doesn't revolve around the internet and these gotchas. So I'm sorry you haven't got James Gunn. They keep on talking about fighting for Snyderverse on Netflix, which I think is a great campaign, but they always come back to their obsessions. They're obsessed with trying to lie about David Zaslav attempting to sell WB Discovery. He can't sell it. He's only just did a merger with Warner Media. Warner Brothers and Discovery have only just merged. You can't sell a company when you've just bought it or you've just merged with it. It can't happen to 2024. Now, I'm not a precog. I'm not Nostradamus. I don't know if they eventually will sell the company. But that's not in my focus now. My only focus is these 4 DC movies this year and, the future with James Gunn and Peter Safran. And hopefully they're doing very well. And here's another update for you. James Gunn, as I said, has been on Twitter and he said that the slate so far, the Gods and Monsters Chapter 1 slate, is only half of the slate. He said he's only announced half of the slate. I told you. That was obvious. That's why I keep on telling you. There's a Wonder Woman movie in there for sure, and there's a Green Lantern movie core movie in there for sure as well. And a few surprises, which he's saying he's got a few surprises for us on that slate. The rumour is he will announce that slate at CinemaCon. Now, I don't know how true that is. I don't think anyone can really know that unless it's an insider speaking from absolute knowledge. But I would love to know in the comments what kind of movies and, HBO Max shows you would like there to be in Gods and Monsters and, Chapter 1 of the DC Universe. So, I don't really have any specific wishes for any other stuff because I'm happy. I'm getting a Superman movie. He's my character. I'm getting a Batman movie. I'm getting a Supergirl movie. I've wanted a Supergirl movie ever since I saw Helen Slater's first Supergirl movie. I love Supergirl. Melissa Benoist in the Arrowverse was a great Supergirl, but she was let down by creative bankruptcy. So I'm very, very excited that we're getting a Supergirl movie as well. Swamp Thing is very, very exciting. The Authority intrigues me. Creature Commandos should be a lot of fun as well. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and I can't wait to see what James and Peter have got planned. I don't agree how they run the DCEU. I've underlined the mistakes within the old DCEU many times, and I've also said that the past is the past and we must look forward. I support the Snyder fans and what they're attempting to do. That's great. But I ain't boycotting anything, and I'm not going to steal the pleasure of myself of getting excited and hyped for DC movies. So I'm very excited for these 4 upcoming movies. I'm very excited for the Flash movie. I think that should be the highlight of the year. If you're a DC fan, the studio are extremely excited about it. I'm excited about it. I'm also excited for Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But we're heading for a new kind of timeline. It basically, James Gunn has already said that the Flash movie resets the timeline. It's a new timeline. That's a fact. There's no getting away from that. We're moving away from the old DCEU. Now, that's going to be very hard to accept for many, many people. A lot of people have become attached to the cast of characters we've had in the DCEU. You know, many people are absolutely devastated and gutted that Henry Cavill will no longer play Superman. It is what it is. We don't have the power to change that. James Gunn is going the way that he's going. Now, Mark Ruffalo, who plays Bruce Banner in the MCU, has said that DC are very, very lucky to have James Gunn, and he is the real deal. And he also said that Marvel should be sweating over this situation. I don't know how to feel about this quote. It somewhat makes me nervous that someone who works with the MCU is saying that. But Mark Ruffalo can't be happy with the way his character, the Hulk, has gone in the MCU. I speak on daily occasions with many, many, hardcore Incredible Hulk fans, fans of the comics and, the character. And, Kevin Feige has done the Hulk dirty. There's no question about that. Don't be surprised if Mark Ruffalo joins DC Universe as well, because it was a weird quote to make unless a journalist just asked him and he had to respond. But I wouldn't think that Kevin Feige would be overly pleased that, an actor in the MCU is saying, Marvel should be sweating over this situation. Look, the MCU have got their own problems beyond DC. They've made a lot of mistakes. They had something incredibly special in the first 3 phases. They invented something so good. A live-action comic book movie series that had post-credit scenes that continued, that set up Tony Stark and Captain America and Thor, and Black Widow, and had a great first kind of, phase villain, who lasted for 3 phases. It was amazing, and Infinity War was great, and Endgame was great, and, it's really been in trouble ever since. So they've got so many problems themselves. If I was them, I wouldn't be too worried about DC. DC hasn't achieved anything yet. The DC universe hasn't even started yet. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. There's a potential to do really well. There's a potential to blow Marvel out of the water. And I think we can both coexist. Of course we can. They've got their stuff, or we're going to have our stuff. And, there's no worry about that. Of course, everyone can coexist. You can have a baker down the road, and 5 minutes down the road, you can have another baker. It doesn't mean one of those businesses won't survive. And it's different. You've got people watching Marvel and people watching DC. Films being released on different dates and different schedules. One's existence doesn't stop the other one's existence. And it always makes me laugh where fans kind of think, one can't, one won't work and the other will. It's a competition to us fans. Obviously, I despise Disney. I have got many Marvel films in my collection, which I've enjoyed, but I'm not a hardcore Marvel fan. I'm a DC fan. And yes, I do want to hear the words in the headlines, DC have beaten Marvel. I think we've beaten Marvel on quality. In Superman the movie, in Batman 89, in Batman 92, in Man of Steel, in Batman vs Superman, in the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, with Joker, with the Batman. We've beaten them on quality so many times. We may not have beaten them on success ratios and Rotten Tomatoes and box office ratios, but in terms of movie quality, we've beaten the MCU on multiple occasions. And that's a fact. And I'll argue with any MCU stan or any journalist who says any different, because I am a fan. I don't give a shit about your Rotten Tomato ratio. I don't give a shit about your box office. It's what I see when I'm watching a movie. But DC is now coming up with something fresh and new. The thing is with the MCU, it's a tried and tested old formula. Kevin Feige isn't going to change what he's doing. He can't change what he's doing. Now, when he starts to see the movies and the content that James Gunn's doing, he may do what Kevin Feige does a lot, which is copy and pattern it. But by then it's going to be too late, and James Gunn and Peter Safran will be hailed for lighting the blue touch paper. As I said yesterday, superhero content was once a trend, but it's not anymore. And to keep these kind of movies successful, look, comic book movies and TV shows are still very popular when they're done well. But what I think the audience will not stand for is bland content. And the Kevin Feige plan is all about laziness and the next chapter and not really paying due diligence to what they're doing. Now, if we go back to phase 4, which hasn't been as good as the first 3 phases, you know, things like What If were really, really good. I enjoyed What If. That's a great plan. You know, that's a good thing. And that's an interesting thing. Now, people will argue at times that was kind of woke, but it was still good. And, you know, but unfortunately, it is what it is. Now, we've got to be careful here because the MCU isn't dead. You know, those movies are still going to make good money. You know, Ant-Man and the Wasp is going to, what, it's going to make 500 million by the end, 600 million. It's solid. You know, I still expect the Marvels to do better than Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. You know, and then obviously the big film for this year that should do really well for Marvel Studios and Disney is James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Will it make $1 billion? Because a CBM hasn't made $1 billion for a couple of years now. So this is very, very, very interesting. Because if James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 can't make $1 billion, don't forget James Gunn has never made $1 billion movie. I'm not saying that's important. But if that film can't bring the MCU $1 billion and beyond, it says something. That proves it. You know, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, you know, having bad reviews and, you know, only making $500, $600 million globally in the global box office isn't confirmation of RIP Marvel Studios. But I believe if this movie failed, that would be a big problem for them. And that would be confirmation that they're in a lot of trouble. James Gunn is popular. The Guardians' first 2 movies have been ever so popular. So that would give them a problem. There is an opportunity here for DC to do something special, to do something fresh. And I think if the Flash movie ends in a really, really exciting way, in a cliffhanger, in setting up this new timeline, then I think we got them. We got them. We got them. We got the audience, and we can start being really, really successful. In terms of movies, you know, the DCEU had a lot of great movies, in my opinion. But to make a franchise and a bunch of movies that are popular as well as having great quality is a mixture we have never had at DC. Also, the question still remains. James Gunn has told us that the Flash movie resets the DC timeline. What does that mean for Blue Beetle? And what does that mean for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Are they part of the new timeline? Or are they still part of the old timeline? That's something I don't understand. I mean, listen, I have seen a test screening for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and I didn't see the whole movie, but from what I saw, it didn't really give you any clues that you're in a new timeline. It did feel that you're still in the original DC Extended Universe timeline. So that's an interesting situation as well. But that's a mystery to me, because if these films are still set in the old DCEU, that's kind of strange, isn't it? Now, James Gunn has reiterated many times that his universe starts with Superman Legacy. That's when it all starts. Now, obviously, the Amanda Waller show, which is starting fresh, if you like, as part of this new era, surely is part of James Gunn's new universe. How is Viola Davis going to be Amanda Waller when she's already been Amanda Waller in the old timeline? Well, it just is. Some people from the DCEU will be part of the new timeline, as James has explained before, and some won't. And that's easily explainable, and that's not at all confusing. But I'm not sure about Blue Beetle, and I'm not sure about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in terms of what timeline they're going to be in, the James Gunn DC Universe or the old DCEU, because it is a strange situation. It wouldn't be a good look for me where you've just, done a Flash movie that resets the timeline, but Blue Beetle and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom are set in the old timeline. That wouldn't make sense. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case. I don't know. That's the honest truth here. Now, clearly, James Gunn has had to add some things to Blue Beetle and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. There's no question about that. The only film that hasn't been interfered with is Shazam! Fury of the Gods, because that film didn't interfere with what they were doing. That doesn't say a lot for Shazam's future in James Gunn's and Peter Safran's universe. If they didn't interfere with it, it's not important. It doesn't matter. If you are saying that The Rock's Black Adam won't be a part of the new universe, which is exactly what James Gunn and The Rock has said, how can Shazam be part of that new universe? I think, again, it's all about box office. Clearly, if that is a big win, then it continues. But if it's not, it will just vanish and disappear. What is my gut feeling about this? My gut feeling is that, regrettably, Shazam! Fury of the Gods isn't going to break box office records and isn't going to make past 500 million. In fact, if it made 500 million, it would be a win for the studio. I think that's how uncertain the box office for this movie is going to be. I think it's, look, people talk about marketing. This is having a great marketing campaign globally. They are everywhere. I'm on Twitter. I'm retweeting it all. If you follow me on Twitter at MoviesTVMad, follow me if you don't, because I'm retweeting all the stuff on Shazam! Fury of the Gods, all your DC gossip, all your Marvel gossip, and all your entertainment gossip in general, so you never miss a trick when you follow me on Twitter. But yeah, there's still quite a few questions to answer on what James Gunn's attempting to do, and in what survives from the old DCEU and what doesn't. But I think we're very, very close to finding some of the answers to these questions. And I think we're very close to finding out part B of Gods and Monsters and that first slate of DC Universe. I'm ever so excited to find out the rest of that slate, because it's going to answer a lot of questions. Am I right? Are we getting a Wonder Woman movie in that slate? Are we getting a Green Lantern Corps movie in that slate? I could be wrong. I'm wrong about a great many things, and that's something else the internet doesn't get. As well as the gotchas being pointless, it's okay to be wrong. This is what happens when you've got your own platform, as I have and many, many others have, that you must state your honest opinions, and probably more often than not, you're going to be wrong. And that's all right. It's not a crime to be wrong. But I think it's wrong to be afraid to state your own opinion just in case you are found out to be wrong, just in case someone does throw a gotcha at you. That's fine. Life's about being yourself and stating your opinion and what you stand for. This has been Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.